Hi, my name is Robin. Welcome to English Grammar Now. Today, we're going to talk about the verb to do. We use the verb to do to talk about many different kinds of activities. For example, I do the dishes. He does his homework. They do a good job. She does her hair. However, we also need do to use in many other kinds of sentences. When we are making a negative sentence that has to be in it, we've already studied how to add not. And when we make a question that has to be, we've looked at how to change the order of the words so that to be is at the beginning. For example, my mother is not home now. Or, is my mother home now? When we make negative statements or questions and there is no to be verb, that's when we need to use to do instead. If we have a sentence that does not have to be in it, we put in to do to help us make the negative sentence. For example, we could not say, I not play the piano. But we would use do to help us make this sentence negative. I do not play the piano. The same thing for questions. When there is no to be verb, we cannot put the main verb at the beginning of a question. So we would not say, play you the piano? We would use do again. Do you play the piano? Here's how we would put do into sentences. We would start with the pronoun, then put in the verb to do. Then, if we want to add negative, we would add the word not. And then comes the main verb. For example, I do not play the piano. Just like we've already studied, you can shorten not with the verb. If the sentence has do not, it makes don't. If the sentence has does not, it makes doesn't. For example, we do not watch movies at home. Sarah does not like pineapple. Aunt Nina doesn't visit often. Now you try. Here's 4 sentences that are all positive. None of them have the to be verb in there. So you will have to add do not, don't, does not, or doesn't to make them negative. Give it a try. Here's the way we could make these sentences negative. They know my phone number becomes they don't know my phone number. He has a bath every day changes to he doesn't have a bath every day. The students like to read books changes to the students don't like to read books. I ride my bicycle to work becomes I don't ride my bicycle to work. There's one more thing we need to notice about adding to do into these sentences. Did you notice that when we add doesn't into this sentence, the second verb changes? He has a bath every day changes to he doesn't have a bath every day. Because the first verb, to do, is changing to match the pronoun he, the main verb will change back into the basic form. For example, we would say, she doesn't swim. We would not change the second verb to match the pronoun. So we would not say, she doesn't swims with an S at the end. The same thing for our second example. Jessie doesn't cook well. Would not change into, Jessie doesn't cooks well. Only one of the verbs will change to match the pronoun. So make sure that if you add don't or doesn't into the sentence, the second verb should stay in the basic form. We can also add in some adverbs to tell how often something happens. For example, I don't always eat breakfast. It usually doesn't rain this much. My family doesn't eat together sometimes. We've talked about using rarely and never before. However, we cannot use rarely and never in negative sentences because they are both negative words. We can use them in a positive sentence, though. For example, it rarely rains this much. The sentence is positive, so we can add rarely or never. When we make questions with to do, we do a similar thing as we would with to be. We take the verb and move it to the beginning of the question. So our questions would look like, do you play the piano? You'll notice that the two verbs do not stay together. Do moves to the front of the sentence, but the main verb stays after the pronoun. Do you play the piano? Here's some other examples. Do we watch movies at home? Does Sarah like pineapple? Does Aunt Nina visit often? Sometimes you may need to ask a negative question. You can add not with do or with the main verb. It's up to you. The meaning is the same. For example, we could say, don't you play the piano? Do you not play the piano? Doesn't Sarah like pineapple? Does Aunt Nina not like pineapple? We can also add question words into questions with do. Just like in questions with to be, the question word will come at the very beginning of the question. For example, why don't you play the piano? What does Sarah like to eat? Where do your grandparents live? Here's something for you to try. Using the group of words, you can write a question. You might have to use does, doesn't, do, or don't. Give it a try. Here's some answers for those questions. Where does your sister work? What do you want for dinner? Where do your parents live? How much does this cost? Does he work on Saturday? Remember that question words come at the very beginning, and the to-do verb that comes right after it needs to match the pronoun that is coming next. Sometimes do becomes does if we are talking about he, she, or it. Let's look at an example conversation that uses do. See if you can find examples of using do, does, don't, or doesn't. Excuse me, do you know when the bus is coming? It comes every 15 minutes. Great, I don't want to be late. Do you take this bus often? No, I usually ride my bike. Oh, why don't you ride it today? It's broken. I don't know how to fix it. That's too bad. Here's where we see do in this conversation. Do you know? I don't want. Do you take? Why don't you ride? And I don't know. You can also see that in a sentence like the second one, it comes every 15 minutes. It's not a negative sentence and it's not a question, so there is no to do in here. All right, thank you for studying to do with me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.